Hey everyone, this is Pastor Sarah back with my blog, Faith at Home, Not Alone. And I hope that you're having a great start to your new year. This vlog series is based on the blog posts that I put on our website, onthejourney.ca. And they're really meant to be an encouragement to you as you practice faith at home, as you parent or grandparent your children. And I just want to walk alongside you in that, because we all need encouragement. We all need support, and sometimes even just some different ideas or ways to think about things can be a help. So that's what I'm hoping to do here with my blog. So today I want to talk about grieving, about children and grief. And this is something that's come up a few times over the last few years of being in ministry. And it's kind of pushed me to look into some resources and ways for us as parents and caregivers to help our children walk through grief. And January sometimes is a time that we think about it because we've come through the holidays. It's been a busy time. Often we'll kind of push those things to the side so that we can celebrate Christmas and New Year's. But then the winter comes, the holidays are over, and that grief can surface or resurface. We're not distracting ourselves with other things. So I think some of the things that I've been learning, and I'm certainly not an expert in this area, but things that I'm learning about grief is that it's important to have places to talk about it, to express our emotions, to allow ourselves to feel the different feelings, because we often will try to just distract ourselves because it doesn't feel nice. Grieving can be very painful. It can be a physical pain in our body as well as in our emotions. And so often we try to distract ourselves and move away from it, or we might see our children acting out with some behaviors or emotions that are very intense, and we want to move them past it. We don't want them to have to experience it, but that's actually not helpful, because we do need to experience these feelings. God has given them to us as a part of living in this world, living in bodies, living in relationships with each other. And Jesus actually modeled grief for us. I think of the story when his dear friends Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, and when Lazarus had died. And even though Jesus knew what was about to happen, that Lazarus was going to be raised from the dead very shortly, he still paused and grieved. He cried. He experienced that grief. So it is important for us to acknowledge it, to experience it, and to allow our children to as well. I also think of the biblical practice of lament, and we see this most often in the Psalms, and there's some different Psalms, like Psalm 13 is an example of one, where the psalmist is expressing lament. They're sad, they're in anguish over what has happened in their life, and they express it. They're honest with their feelings to God, but they don't stay in just the place of despair. They actually are able to express it and then move to expressing hope in God in the end. So there's kind of this movement where we want to express our grief, but we also don't want to get stuck in it where we're always in that place of the heavy feelings. So there is kind of a movement, and it can grief doesn't just come and go quickly, or we don't have kind of a moment of grieving, then it's all done. It's usually comes in waves, where we have a time where we're feeling the grief, and then we come through, and then it'll come again. And I think of my own case with the death of my sister when I was a teenager, that even now, almost 30 years later, there's a new grief that can show up. Maybe it's a family get-together, and suddenly I realize she's not there and we're not able to experience that with her. Or I think back a few years ago when a cousin of mine got married, and it was just another moment of realizing some of the loss that I wouldn't experience my sister getting married and being with her in that. So we don't get over grief. We can't kind of just push ourselves through it. It's really a lifelong journey, especially depending on what we're grieving. So here are 3 things that I've learned in my journey of grief. We can be happy and sad at the same time. So this is something I think that children can also benefit from, that we might feel like crying one moment or feel angry or some really negative, what we would see as negative emotions. And then the next moment we might be feeling okay, or we might want to joke or laugh at something. That's okay, that can happen. And we can have good memories about the person who has died, or maybe it's a pet who's died, or we've moved to a new place and we're missing friends. So we can feel that sadness, but we can also be happy at the same time. That's okay. Another thing is that God is with me in my grief. So I can be real with God about my feelings, and we can teach our children and help them pray and express their feelings of grief, of pain with God, and just be real about them. We don't have to stuff them or try and hide them. God already knows how we're feeling, and He wants to be with us. He wants to walk with us in this journey of grief. And some simple prayers that they can pray is, God, I feel really angry right now, or God, I'm really sad right now. I miss so-and-so, or I miss going to this school, or I miss my friends, or I miss my pet. Saying a simple prayer like that can just be a way of allowing God to be with us in that moment. And a third thing is that remembering is important. So having times that we can remember, that we can pause and think about the person or the situation that we're grieving. And it could be something more formal, like having maybe a service or a remembering time together, or it could be something that's more informal. And here's some ideas that I came across that I think are maybe some great ideas to use. One is having a memory box. And you could just take a shoebox or any box that you want. You could have your child decorate them. And inside the box you put pictures, letters, photographs. Maybe they want to draw something. They might want to write a letter to their loved one. And anything like that could be little mementos or objects that have a special meaning, and they could put them in the box, and then they can take the box out and look through it as a way of remembering. I think of something my mom had made was a scrapbook. She enjoyed doing scrapbooking, and so she put together a scrapbook of pictures of my sister, and I know that was very helpful for her and for us too in looking back on those pictures. Another one is having a memory meal. So have a meal maybe with your family or some loved ones, and make some of the favorite dishes that your loved one had, or just having a special time to remember together over the meal. So eating together and then sharing some memories or stories with each other. So another idea is memory objects. And for children, kind of having sensory or tactile items could be very helpful with their grief. So you could make a blanket or pillow from clothes of the loved one. They could keep a special article of clothing or some other object that is important, and again, it's something they can hold and help them with their grief. And the final one is having a memory ceremony. And so your church might have that. I know at our church we have a Blue Christmas service, or you might want to have one with your family and friends, have your own memory ceremony. And you can involve your child in what to do. Maybe it's having a candle to light, a special song to sing or poem to read, or or scripture verse to read that can make it meaningful. Just involving your children in that could be a way to help them. So these are some ways. I also want to encourage you to go to my blog. You can find it at our website, onthejourney.ca, and I have a number of links on that blog with different activity sheets that can be helpful for children. Some are writing a letter to a loved one. Some have some ideas like what I mentioned here, but they can just be ways that you can help walk with your child through grief. And I also want to mention that sometimes it is important to have a counselor involved, and if you're just feeling overwhelmed or your child is, to find someone that you can bring them to who can just help them through part of the journey. But as parents, grandparents, caregivers, we're really walking through them on that day in, day out basis. So we want to have some kind of tools that we have also to help them through this. So I hope this was an encouragement to you, maybe gave you some ideas of how you can walk with your child in times of grief. And if you have any other ideas or things that you have done in your own life or family, I'd love to hear about it. You can write it in the comments or shoot me an email, sarah@onthejourney.ca. I'd love to hear from you. And remember, we're doing Faith at Home, but we're not alone. We're in this together. And I just pray God will bless you today.